A broke janitor, humiliated for inheriting a worthless mine, until a shocking discovery changes everything. What lay buried beneath the dirt would rewrite his destiny. This is the unbelievable story of perseverance, betrayal, and a secret worth $800 million. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications, because you won't want to miss what happens next. The laughingstock of Cedar Ridge. The bell above the diner door jingled as Ethan Cole stepped inside, the familiar scent of grease and coffee wrapping around him like an old, unwelcome friend. It was just past 6 in the morning. The sky still bruised with the last remnants of night, and the usual crowd of truckers and early risers barely glanced up as he shuffled to his usual booth in the corner. Ethan was used to being invisible. At 42, he had spent the last 15 years as a janitor at Cedar Ridge High School, mopping floors, scrubbing bathrooms, and collecting forgotten debris of teenagers who barely registered his existence. His hands were rough, his back ached, and his boots were worn thin, but he never complained. Not when the kids called him Old Mop Bucket behind his back, not when the teachers left their coffee spills for him to clean up without so much as a thank you, and certainly not when his paycheck barely covered rent and groceries. But today was different. He unfolded the letter for what felt like the 100th time, the paper creased from being stuffed in his pocket all week. The lawyer's words hadn't changed, no matter how many times he reread them. As the sole surviving heir, you are hereby bequeathed the property known as Blackridge Mine, including all mineral rights, as per the last will and testament of Howard J. Cole. His uncle, a man he hadn't seen in 20 years. A man who had, according to family lore, wasted his life chasing fool's gold in a played-out coal mine. Ethan exhaled, rubbing his temple. He hadn't even known the old man was dead until the letter arrived. "Hey, Cole." A booming voice cut through the diner's murmur. Ethan didn't have to look up to know it was Vince Holloway, the foreman at the nearby auto shop and Cedar Ridge's resident loudmouth. Vince slid into the booth across from him, grinning like a wolf who'd caught the scent of blood. "Heard you finally got your big inheritance," Vince said, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. "What was it again?" "A busted-up mine full of rocks and regret." A few chuckles rippled through the room. Ethan kept his eyes on his coffee. "Better than nothing," he muttered. "Oh, come on. Don't be like that," Vince pressed, leaning in. "I mean, your uncle was legendary. Spent 30 years digging for a fortune that wasn't there, and now you get to follow in his footsteps." He barked a laugh. "Guess crazy runs in the family, huh?" Ethan's fingers tightened around the mug. He could feel the stares, the smirks. The same ones he'd endured since he was a kid. Poor Ethan Cole, the boy with a drunk dad and the dead-end future. The waitress, a tired-eyed woman named Darla, slid a plate of eggs and toast in front of him. "Ignore him, Ethan," she said quietly. Vince wasn't done. "Seriously, though, what are you going to do with it? Turn it into a tourist trap? Come see the saddest hole in West Virginia." More laughter. Ethan's face burned, but he forced himself to take a slow bite of toast. He wouldn't give Vince the satisfaction. But later, as he clocked in at the school, the whispers followed him down the hall. "Did you hear about Cole's fortune?" "Yeah, I heard it's a pile of dirt and a whole lot of disappointment." Even the kids snickered as he passed. By the time his shift ended, Ethan's jaw hurt from clenching it. He drove straight to the outskirts of town, where the trees grew thick and the roads turned to gravel. The mine's entrance loomed ahead, a dark mouth and hillside, half collapsed and choked with weeds. A rusted sign, barely legible, read, "Blackridge Mine, EST 1912. Ethan stepped inside, the air instantly cooler, damp with the scent of earth and old timber. His flashlight cut through the gloom, revealing cracked support beams and abandoned tools. "This is it?" he thought bitterly. "This is what they're all laughing about?" Then his light caught something on the wall, a jagged seam in the rock, glittering faintly. He moved closer, brushing away dust. The rock beneath his fingers wasn't dull like coal. It shimmered metallic. A sudden crack echoed above him. Ethan barely had time to leap back before a section of the ceiling collapsed, sealing the entrance behind him in a cloud of dust and debris. His heart pounded. The flashlight flickered. And in that shaky beam of light, the wall glinted back at him. Not with the dull black of coal, but with something far stranger. Something valuable. Buried secrets. Ethan coughed. the thick dust clogging his throat as he waved a hand in front of his face. The beam of his flashlight flickered again, threatening to plunge him into total darkness. His pulse hammered in his ears, louder than the settling debris around him. Trapped. The word echoed in his mind, sharp and suffocating. He turned in a slow circle, the weak light barely cutting through the swirling dust. The cave-in had completely blocked the entrance. No way out. Panic clawed at his chest, but he forced himself to breathe. Think. He had his phone, no signal, of course, and a half-empty water bottle in his backpack. If he rationed it, he might last long enough for someone to notice he was missing. Yeah, right. Who would? The school wouldn't check on him until he didn't show up for his shift tomorrow. By then, he could be... Stop. He clenched his fists, nails biting into his palms. Focus. The glint in the wall caught his eye again. Ethan stepped closer, wiping sweat from his brow. The rock wasn't smooth like coal. It was jagged, almost crystalline, reflecting the light in a way that made his breath hitch. He scraped at it with his pocket knife, and a small chunk came loose in his hand. It was heavier than it looked, and it shone. What the hell is this? He stuffed the rock into his pocket, just as his flashlight dimmed again. A warning. He needed to move. The mine had other passages. His uncle's old maps showed that much. If he could find one, maybe there was another way out. Ethan edged along the wall, one hand trailing the rough stone to keep his bearings. The air grew damper, the scent of earth and rusted metal thickening. His boot hit something solid, an old cart half buried in rubble. He stepped over it, his light catching on something metallic on the ground. A pickaxe. He grabbed it without thinking. A weapon. A tool. Either way, it was better than nothing. The tunnel branched ahead, left or right. A faint draft brushed his face from the left. Airflow. Maybe a way out. He followed it, the passage narrowing until he had to turn sideways to squeeze through. The walls pressed in, cold and unyielding. His breath came faster, shallower. Then light. Not much. Just a thin sliver, seeping through a crack in the rock. But it was enough. Ethan wedged the pickaxe into the gap and pushed. The rock groaned, then gave way with a shower of pebbles. Fresh air rushed in, cool and sweet. He scrambled through, emerging onto a steep hillside. The sun was setting, painting the trees in gold and orange. He was alive, and he had something. Mara Voss's lab was cluttered with rocks, maps, and half-drunk cups of coffee. She was the only geologist in Cedar Ridge, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s who had moved to town for reasons no one quite understood. Ethan had seen her around but never spoken to her. Until now. He set the rock on her desk with a quiet clink. Mara barely glanced up from her microscope. If this is gold? Question. The answer's no. It's pyrite. Always is. It's not gold, Ethan said. That made her look. She picked up the rock, turning it under the light. Her expression shifted. First curiosity, then disbelief. She grabbed a loop, examining it closer. Where did you get this? Her voice was low, urgent. Ethan hesitated. Black Ridge Mine. Mara's eyes snapped to his. Howard Cole's mine? Yeah. She set the rock down carefully, as if it might explode. This isn't coal, Ethan. It's rhodium. He frowned. What's that? One of the rarest metals on Earth. More valuable than gold. Way more. She pulled up a chart on her computer, pointing to a number that made his stomach drop. $14,000 per ounce. Ethan's mouth went dry. That's not possible. It is, Mara said. And if this came from Blackridge, there could be more. A knock at the door made them both jump. A man in a tailor's suit stood there, smiling like a shark. Ethan Cole? Roland Cray. I heard you might have something interesting on your hands. Ethan's blood ran cold. Cray, the owner of Cray Mining, the company that had bought up every viable mine in the region, the man who had driven smaller operators out of business with lawsuits and strong-arm tactics. And now he was here. Mara's fingers curled around the rock, her gaze locking with Ethan's. Too late. The secret was out. Cray stepped inside, his smile never wavering. Let's talk about your mine. The fight begins. Ethan's fingers twitched toward the rock still clutched in Mara's hand. His first instinct was to grab it and run. But Cray blocked the doorway, his tailored suit and polished shoes a stark contrast to the cluttered, fluorescent-lit chaos of Mara's lab. "Mr. Cole," Cray repeated, his voice smooth as port oil. "I couldn't help but hear you've come into possession of Blackridge Mine." His eyes flicked to the rock. "And it seems you made quite the discovery." Ethan forced himself to stay still. "It's just a rock." Cray chuckled, stepping further inside. The door clicked shut behind him. "Come now. We both know it's more than that." He reached into his breast pocket and slid a business card onto the desk. "I'd like to make you an offer." Mara's knuckles whitened around the rhodium sample. Ethan could almost hear her thoughts screaming at him. "Don't say another word." Cray didn't wait for a response. $50,000. Cash. For the mine and all mineral rights. The number hit Ethan like a punch. $50,000 was more than he made in 2 years. It would pay off his debts, fix his truck, maybe even get him out of Cedar Ridge for good. But Mara's sharp inhale cut through the temptation. $50,000? She repeated, voice tight. For a potential rhodium deposit? Cray's smile didn't waver. "It's a generous offer, considering the mine's condition and the legal risks." Ethan stiffened. "What legal risks?" "Oh, I'm sure it's nothing." Cray waved a hand. "But abandoned mines can have complications. Ownership disputes. Environmental liabilities. I'd be doing you a favor, really." Mara's chair scraped back as she stood. "He'll need time to consider." Cray's gaze lingered on her, then slid back to Ethan. "Of course, but don't take too long." He tapped the business card. Opportunities like this don't last. The moment the door closed behind him, Mara whirled on Ethan. "Don't even think about it." Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I wasn't." "That mine could be worth hundreds of millions," she hissed. "And he knows it. That's why he's trying to scare you into selling." Ethan picked up the business card. Roland Cray, CEO, Cray Mining and Resources. The paper was thick, expensive. The kind of thing you'd hand to politicians and bankers, not janitors. "He's not going to stop at an offer," Ethan muttered. Mara nodded grimly. "We need proof. Enough to make sure no one can just take this from you." The next morning, Ethan returned to Blackridge Mine, Mara at his side. She carried a backpack full of tools, geologist's hammer, vials, a portable spectrometer. "If we can document the deposit and file a proper claim before Cray makes his move, you'll have leverage," she said, scanning the hillside. Ethan kicked a loose stone. "Or we'll just piss him off." "He's already pissed off." Mara adjusted her gloves. "He just doesn't know it yet." They slipped inside the mine, this time with proper headlamps and a rope tied to the entrance in case of another collapse. The air was cooler underground, the silence oppressive. Mara went straight to the glinting vein Ethan had found. She scraped at it with her hammer, collecting samples into vials. The spectrometer beeped as she scanned it. "Definitely rhodium," she confirmed. "And the concentration is high." She shone her light further down the tunnel. "This isn't just a vein. This would be a deposit." Ethan's pulse jumped. "How much?" "Enough to make Cray's 50 grand look like pocket change." A noise echoed from deep in the mine, a scrape of metal on rock. They froze. Mara killed her headlamp. Ethan did the same, plunging them into darkness. Footsteps. Someone was in here with them. Ethan's hand found Mara's arm in the dark, squeezing a warning. They stayed perfectly still, listening. The footsteps moved closer. Then a muttered curse. A flashlight beam cut through the black, sweeping the walls. Ethan recognized the voice. "Vince." "Said it was here," Vince grumbled to someone unseen. "Cole was bragging about it at the diner. Said it was worth a fortune." A second voice answered, deeper, unfamiliar. "Just find the damn rock." Mara's breath hitched. Ethan tightened his grip. Vince's light swept closer. Any second now it would land on them. Then a crack. A section of the ceiling near Vince gave way, raining debris. He yelped, stumbling back. "Shit, this place is going to bury us alive." The second man cursed. "Forget it." Cray said just scare him, not die in here. Their footsteps retreated, fading into the tunnels. Ethan didn't move until long after sound had disappeared. Mara exhaled shakily. Cray sent them. Ethan's jaw clenched. Yeah. They waited another minute before relighting their lamps. The rhodium vein glinted mockingly in the light. Mara stuffed the last of her samples into her pack. We need to get these to a proper lab. Somewhere Cray can't interfere. Ethan nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. Cray wasn't just trying to buy him out. He was sending people after him. And Ethan had a bad feeling this was only the beginning. Trust no one. The drive back to town was silent, tense. Ethan kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights tailing them. The samples clinked to Mara's backpack with every bump in the road, a constant reminder of what was at stake. Mara finally spoke as they passed a Welcome to Cedar Ridge sign, its paint peeling. We need to get these to a lab outside the county. Somewhere Cray doesn't have connections. Ethan's fingers tightened on the wheel. And then what? Even if we prove it's rhodium, Cray's got lawyers, money, people in his pocket. I'm just, he bit back the words, just a janitor. Mara shot him a look. You're the legal owner. That's what matters. He didn't answer. Ownership hadn't stopped Cray before. Everyone in town knew the story of the McCready family. Their land sold under pressure after a mysterious fire. Cray played dirty. Ethan pulled up to Mara's apartment, a rundown complex on the edge of town. She hesitated before getting out. You should stay somewhere else tonight. If Vince was in that mine. Yeah. He'd already thought of that. His own apartment wasn't safe. Mara reached into her pocket and tossed him a key. Storage unit behind the old gas station. I keep emergency supplies there. No one knows about it. Ethan caught it. You've done this before? Her smile was thin. Not all monsters wear suits. The storage unit was musty but dry, stacked with camping gear and boxes labeled rock samples. Ethan shoved aside a sleeping bag and sat on the floor, his back against the wall. He pulled out his phone. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. Cray, probably. A knock at the unit's metal door made him freeze. Cole? It's Liam. Ethan exhaled in relief. Liam Carter had been his friend since 3rd grade, now one of Cedar Ridge's few honest deputies. He unlatched the door and Liam slipped inside, his uniform rumpled, face grim. Damn, Ethan, you're in deep shit. Ethan rubbed his eyes. What now? Liam pulled a folded newspaper from his vest. The headline screamed, Local man's inheritance could bring jobs or environmental disaster. Below it, a quote from Roland Cray. We're concerned about unregulated mining endangering the community. Ethan's stomach dropped. That's not, I haven't even. Doesn't matter. Liam lowered his voice. Cray's got the county council talking safety inspections. They'll shut the mine down, pending review, and by the time the paperwork clears, you'll be broke and desperate to sell. Ethan crumpled the paper. So what do I do? Liam hesitated. You trust that geologist? Yeah. Then get her to verify that rhodium. Fast. Before Cray can bury it in red tape. He glanced at the door. And watch your back. Cray owns half this town. Ethan spent a sleepless night listening for footsteps outside the unit. At dawn, he drove to the only place he could think of, the Cedar Ridge Public Library. The ancient computers there still had internet access, and more importantly, no cameras. He searched rhodium mining rights and nearly choked on his coffee. The prices were insane. If even a fraction of what Mara suspected was in Blackridge, he wouldn't just be rich. He'd be powerful. A shadow fell over the screen. Researching her newfound fortune? Ethan spun to find Darla, the diner waitress, holding a stack of books. Her usual tired smile was gone. He forced a laugh. Just killing time. Darla leaned in, voice low. Vince came into the diner last night, bragging about how you wouldn't be a problem much longer. She pressed a napkin into his hand. A phone number. My brother's a journalist in Charleston. If something happens, call him. Ethan stared at the napkin. Even Darla, who'd barely said 2 words to him in years, thought he was in danger. Mara met him at the storage unit at noon, her face flushed with excitement. I got a hold of a colleague at the state university. He'll run the samples discreetly. She paused. But we have another problem. She pulled out her phone, a news alert. County Council calls emergency session on mining safety. Ethan's blood ran cold. How fast can your colleague work? 48 hours. Maybe less. They didn't have that kind of time. Ethan paced the cramped unit. We need to get back into the mine. Document everything before Cray gets it shut down. Mara nodded. Tonight, and this time, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check your bank account. Ethan frowned, pulling up his banking app, and froze. Balance, $0. Account frozen, pending legal action. Mara's breath caught. Ethan, another text flashed. Still think it's worth it? The door burst open. Vince stood there, grinning. 2 men in Cray mining uniforms flanked him. Sheriff's looking for you, Cole. Something about trespassing on private property. Ethan's heart pounded. The storage unit wasn't his, but the mine was. Unless Cray had already found a way to take it. The hidden map. Ethan's muscles tense, ready to fight, but Mara's hand clamped onto his wrist like a vice. Don't. Her eyes screamed it before she forced a smile at Vince. Trespassing. She laughed, sharp and artificial. Ethan owns Blackridge Mine. How can he trespass on his own property? Vince's grin faltered for half a second before he recovered. Not according to the county records we just pulled. Says here the mineral rights reverted to the state after Howard Cole's death. He slapped a folded document against Ethan's chest. You're squatting, mop bucket. Ethan snatched the paper, scanning the dense legalese. His uncle's name jumped out, along with a string of dates and clauses. It looked official. It smelled official. But that's bullshit, he growled. The lawyer's letter said. Lawyers make mistakes. Vince shrugged. Or maybe your uncle wasn't as thorough as he thought. The 2 Cray men stepped forward, arms crossed. They weren't armed, but they didn't need to be. Ethan had seen what happened to people who resisted Cray's business deals. Broken Bones had a way of making signatures easier to collect. Mara's fingers dug into Ethan's arm. We'll go. No problem. Vince smirked. Smart girl. They drove in silence for 5 miles before Ethan slammed his fist against the dashboard. We're not giving up. Mara gripped the wheel, knuckles white. We're not, but we can't fight them head on. She took a sharp turn onto a dirt road, dust clouding behind them. We need leverage. Like what? My bank account's frozen. The mine's paperwork is suddenly in dispute, and... Your uncle, Mara interrupted. He spent decades in that mine. If there was ever a way to prove it's yours, he'd have left a trail. Ethan exhaled, forcing his fist to unclench. She was right. Uncle Howard had been paranoid, even before he disappeared into that hole in the ground. There had to be something. The Cedar Ridge Historical Society was housed in a crumbling brick building that smelled of mildew and yellowed paper. The clerk, an elderly woman with thick glasses, squinted at them. Howard Cole? Oh, yes. He donated some maps years ago. She led them to a back room where framed surveys lined the walls. Never could convince him to give up his personal journals, though. Said they were for family only. Ethan and Mara exchanged a glance. Where would those journals be now? Ethan asked. The woman shrugged. Wherever he left them, I suppose. Blackridge Mine loomed in the twilight, its entrance now cordoned off with fresh, no trespassing, signs bearing the Cray Mining logo. Ethan ripped one down as they slipped inside. We're looking for a journal. Mara whispered, sweeping her flashlight beam over the walls. Anything that might. Ethan froze. A memory surfaced, his uncle's voice years ago, slurred by whiskey. If you ever need to find something, boy, look where the light don't reach. He turned abruptly, heading deeper into the mine. Ethan! Mara hurried after him. The tunnel branched, then narrowed. Ethan ducked under a low beam, his light catching on a rusted metal box wedged into a crevice. It was barely visible behind a false rock face, a trick only someone who'd spent years underground would spot. The box opened with a screech of hinges. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, a leather-bound journal. Ethan's breath caught as he flipped it open. Page after page of cramped handwriting detailed mineral deposits, dates, and... Found the secondary vein today. Rich as Croesus and twice as stubborn. They'll never let me keep it if they know. Mara's light trembled over the words. There's another deposit. Ethan turned the page. A map unfolded, revealing a labyrinth of tunnels with one marked in red. The real fortune. A noise echoed from the entrance. Voices. Flashlight beams. Vince again? Crazed men? Mara snapped a photo of the map with her phone and shoved the journal back into the box. We need to go. Now. They moved silently, following the map's twist until they reached a sheer wall, the end of the tunnel. No, Ethan whispered. This is it. The map says. Mara ran her hands over the rock. There. A nearly invisible seam. She braced her shoulder against it and pushed. For a heart-stopping second, nothing happened. Then, with a groan, the rock pivoted. Cool air rushed out. Not the stale damp of the mine, but something fresher. Ethan's light pierced the darkness, illuminating. Gold, not literally. The walls gleamed, streaked with veins of metallic, while it reflected their lights like 1,000 tiny mirrors. Mara's voice was reverent. Rhodium, and platinum, and... She stepped forward, her boot knocking against something metallic. A skeleton. The remains sat slumped against the wall, a rusted pickaxe beside it. Around its neck hung a locket, one Ethan recognized. His mother had given to Uncle Howard the last Christmas they'd all spent together. Ethan's knees hit the ground. Mara touched his shoulder. I'm so sorry. He swallowed hard. He found it, and he died protecting it. Shouts echoed behind them. Closer now. Mara pulled Ethan up. We have to move. This proves the mine is yours. Your uncle left it to you. Ethan took one last look at the skeleton, at the man who'd given him everything. Then he grabbed the locket and sealed the hidden chamber behind them. Cray wanted a war? He'd get one. Underground showdown. The locket burned in Ethan's pocket as they retraced their steps to the tunnels, the distant shouts growing louder. His throat was tight, not just from the dust, but from the weight of what they'd found. Uncle Howard hadn't abandoned the mine. He'd died in it, protecting it. Mara gripped his arm, yanked him behind a support beam just as flashlight beams cut across the tunnel ahead. Said they came in here, Vince's voice echoed. Check every damn crevice. Ethan pressed his back against the damp rock, holding his breath. 3 beams of light swept past their hiding spot, close enough that he could smell the stale cigarette smoke clinging to Vince's jacket. Mara mouthed a single word, distraction. Ethan nodded. He grabbed a loose rock and hurled it down a side passage. The clatter sent the searchers scrambling. Over there, the moment their lights disappeared, Ethan and Mara bolted in the opposite direction, following the map's twist toward a secondary exit Howard had marked, an old air shaft hidden by brush. They burst into the cold night air, gasping. The mine's entrance was now swarming with crazed men, their trucks blocking the road. Mara pulled out her phone. We need to get these photos to my contact at the university. Once we have certified proof of the deposit. A gunshot rang out. Dirt exploded at their feet. Ethan grabbed Mara and dug behind a boulder as another shot cracked against the rock above them. Vince's voice carried across the clearing. Should have taken the money, Cole. Ethan's pulse roared in his ears. He'd known Cray was ruthless, but gunfire? This wasn't just intimidation anymore. Mara's hands shook as she dialed. Liam, we need help. Ethan peered around the boulder. Vince and 2 others were advancing, their silhouettes black against the floodlights they'd set up. One carried a rifle. Then sirens. Red and blue lights sliced through the trees as a sheriff's cruiser skidded into the clearing. Liam leapt out, hand on his sidearm. Drop it, Holloway. Vince hesitated, then lowered the rifle with a smirk. Just protecting private property, deputy. Liam's gaze flicked to Ethan and Mara. You two all right? Mara stood, phone still clutched in her hand. We have proof the mine is Ethan's, and proof it's worth millions. Liam's jaw tightened. Get in the car. The sheriff's office was a cramped, fluorescent-lit box that smelled of burnt coffee. Sheriff Hayes himself, a grizzled man with a reputation for favoring Cray, leaned against his desk, arms crossed. Let me get this straight, he drawled. You're claiming Cray mining falsified records to steal your mine, and that there's a fortune in, what was it? Rhodium, Mara said. Hayes snorted. And you just happened to find this out after 30 years of it being a worthless hole? Ethan set the locket on the desk. My uncle died in that mine. He left it to me. Legally. Hayes picked up the locket, squinting at the inscription inside. To Howard, always yours, Marie. Ethan's mother's handwriting. For a moment, the sheriff's expression wavered. Then he pushed it back. Even if that's true, Cray's got paperwork saying otherwise. This is a civil matter. Liam stepped forward. Sir, given the gunfire, which Holloway claims was warning shots at trespassers. Hayes stood. My advice? Take Cray's money, while you still can. The dismissal was clear. Back in Liam's cruiser, Ethan slammed his fist against the dash. They're going to get away with it. Liam gripped the wheel. Not if we move fast. That proof you mentioned, how solid is it? Mara pulled up the photos on her phone. These samples are on their way to a state lab, once we have a report. Cray'll have his lawyers buried in court for years, Ethan muttered. Liam took a sharp turn. Then we don't go to court. He drove to the Cedar Ridge Gazette, the town's long-declining newspaper. The sole reporter, a grizzled man named O'Leary, listened without interrupting as Mara laid out the evidence. When she finished, O'Leary whistled. Cray won't like this hitting the front page. Ethan leaned forward. Exactly. Dawn was breaking as they left the Gazette. Ethan's whole body ached, but for the first time in days, he felt something like hope. Then his phone buzzed. A voicemail from a bank. Mr. Cole, your accounts remain frozen pending investigation into potential fraud related to your inheritance. Mara's phone chimed next, a text from her university contact. Lab was raided. Samples confiscated by state inspectors. Ethan met her eyes. Cray wasn't playing fair, and neither would they. The truth comes out. The fluorescent lights of the Cedar Ridge Gazette office hummed like angry wasps as O'Leary spread the photos across his desk. Ethan's map, the hidden chamber. The skeletal remained still clutching Howard Cole's rusted pickaxe. The reporter's cigarette trembled between his fingers as he squinted at the locket's inscription. Jesus Christ, O'Leary muttered. Cray's been trying to bury this for decades. Ethan's stomach twisted. What do you mean? O'Leary yanked open a filing cabinet, sending a cloud of dust into the air. He pulled a yellowed newspaper clipping from 1993. Local miner claims massive find, disappears. The photo showed a younger Howard Cole, grinning beside a mine entrance. Your uncle wasn't just some crazy prospector, O'Leary said. He found that rhodium vein 30 years ago. Tried to go public, but Cray's father bought off every geologist who verified it. Then Howard vanished. He stabbed a finger at the locket. Now we know why. Mara's face paled. They killed him. A chill crawled down Ethan's spine. His uncle hadn't gotten lost in a collapse. He'd been murdered. O'Leary was already typing furiously. This runs tomorrow. Front page, above the fold. With the sheriff's department's negligence in reopening Howard's missing person case highlighted in bold. Liam's radio crackled. A dispatcher's voice cut through the static. All units, report to Blackridge Mine. Structure fire. Ethan's blood turned to ice. Black smoke coiled into the dawn sky as they skidded to a stop. The mine entrance was engulfed, flames licking up the support beams. Cray's men stood back, arms crossed, as firefighters unrolled hoses. Too late. Vince smirked from behind the police tape. Guess nature took its course. Ethan lunged, but Liam hauled him back. Don't. That's what he wants. Mara gripped Ethan's arm. The chamber, she whispered. It's deep underground. The fire can't reach it. But the truth hit Ethan like a pickaxe to the ribs. Without the mine's entrance, no one could prove the deposit existed anymore. Cray had just burned away their evidence. Then, a roar of engines. A convoy of news vans rolled in, cameras already rolling. O'Leary stepped out of the lead van. Cell phone pressed his ear. He gave Ethan a sharp nod. The Gazette had gone to print early. By noon, the story was everywhere. Decades-old murder cover-up linked to billion-dollar mining scandal. Cray mining accused of fraud, arson, and homicide. Sheriff Hayes, suddenly eager to distance himself from Cray, gave a press conference announcing a full investigation into Howard Cole's death. State geologists were en route to Blackridge. Even the governor's office issued a statement. Ethan sat on the hood of Liam's cruiser, watching the chaos unfold. Reporters swarmed Cray's offices. Protesters waved signs. And in the middle of it all, Roland Cray was escorted from his building in handcuffs, his tailored suit rumpled, his shark smile finally gone. Mara handed Ethan a coffee. They're talking federal charges. Fraud. Conspiracy. Maybe even murder. Ethan sipped the bitter brew, watching the smoke still curling from his mind. It's not over yet. His phone buzzed, an unknown number. He almost didn't answer. The voice on the other end was crisp, professional. Mr. Cole? Eleanor Shaw from Shaw and Mendez Capital. We represent investors interested in ethical mineral development. We'd like to discuss financing your operation. Mara's eyebrows shot up. Ethan exhaled. The fight wasn't over. But for the first time, he wasn't fighting alone. That night, under the cover of darkness, they returned to the mine. The fire had burned out, leaving the entrance a charred skeleton. But when Ethan shone his light down the shaft, the glint from the hidden chamber still winked back. Howard's fortune, Cedar Ridge's future, and Ethan's revenge. He squeezed the locket in his palm. Let's get to work. Rise of the Underdog. The rhythmic clank of survey equipment echoed through Blackridge Mine as Ethan watched a team of engineers from Shaw and Mendez map the tunnels. The fire had scorched the entrance, but the heart of the mine, Howard's hidden chamber, remained untouched. Eleanor Shaw, a silver-haired woman in a pristine hard hat, studied the spectrometer readings with Mara. This isn't just a deposit, she said, voice hushed. It's a mother lode. Ethan wiped sweat from his brow. The air underground was thick with the scent of damp earth and something sharper, metallic, electric, like the mine itself was humming with potential. A hand clapped his shoulder. Liam, out of uniform for once, grinned. Front page of the Charleston Gazette today. Local janitor unearths corporate conspiracy. He shook his head. Never thought I'd see the day Craig got perp-walked. Ethan glanced at the locket around his neck. Howard's. Now his. Yeah, me neither. But the victory felt hollow when he thought of his uncle's bones, still waiting in the dark. The town meeting was packed. Cedar Ridge's community center, usually half empty for bingo nights, now overflowed with miners, shopkeepers, even kids perched on parents' shoulders. Reporters lined the walls, cameras rolling. Ethan stood at the front, his calloused hands gripping the podium. He'd worn his only button-down shirt, the collar scratching his neck. Blackridge Mine isn't just mine, he said, voice rough. It's ours. He nodded to Mara, who projected a map onto the wall. This deposit could employ half the county for decades, but not the way Cray did it. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Eleanor Shaw stepped forward, all business. Our proposal is a worker-owned cooperative, profit shared, safety standards above federal requirements, and 20% reinvested in Cedar Ridge, schools, clinics, roads. Darla, the diner waitress, stood up. What's the catch? No catch, Ethan said. Just a fair shot. A man in a faded flannel shirt, Tommy Riggs, who'd worked Cray's mines until his lungs gave out, coughed into his hand. And if Cray's buddies try to stop it? Ethan met his gaze. Then we fight. The applause started slow, then built into something that shook the rafters. Later, at the diner, Mara poked at her pie. You know they'll come at us harder now, right? Cray's got friends in the State House. Judges. Ethan stirred his coffee. Let them. She smirked. Look at you. Janitor turned mogul. He snorted. I still don't know what half those contracts say. But you know what's right. Mara's smile faded. Howard would be proud. Ethan's throat tightened. He looked out the window at Main Street, the cracked sidewalks, the shuttered stores. For the first time, he let himself imagine it different. Busy, alive, a town worth staying for. The letter arrived the next morning. Official notice, permit review hearing. The State Mining Board, stacked with Cray's donors, had concerns about the cooperative model. A delayed tactic, but a dangerous one. Without permits, the mine stayed closed. Ethan crumpled the paper. Mara snatched it, scanning the fine print. They're claiming lack of experience as ground for denial. Liam cursed. That's bullshit. You got Shaw's team, certified geologists. It's not about qualifications, Ethan said quietly. It's about sending a message. Know your place. He pulled a locket from under his shirt, rubbing the engraving with his thumb. Howard had fought and died. Ethan wouldn't make the same mistake. He reached for his phone. Time to call in reinforcements. The hearing room was a marble-lined arena, every seat filled with suits. Cray's lawyers occupied the front row, their briefcases costing more than Ethan's truck. The board chairman, a silver-spoon bureaucrat named Hargrove, barely glanced up as Ethan approached the microphone. "Mr. Cole, this board has serious reservations about your ability to—" The doors banged open. A wave of people flooded in, miners in work boots, teachers, Tommy Riggs wheeling his oxygen tank. They stood shoulder to shoulder, silent, until Darla stepped forward. "We're here for Ethan Cole." Hargrove's gavel hovered. "This is highly irregular." Then the cameras turned as Governor Ayers walked in. The room erupted. Ethan hadn't just called the media. He'd called in the people. And for the first time, the suits looked nervous. New enemies, new resolve. The governor's entrance sent a shockwave through the hearing room. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing, while Hargrove's face turned the color of spoiled milk. Roland Cray's lawyers exchanged frantic whispers, one already dialing a number on his phone. Governor Ayers, a lean man with a reputation for crushing corporate overreach, took his time walking to the front. He didn't sit, didn't ask permission, just stood beside Ethan and faced the board. "I've reviewed Mr. Cole's proposal," he said, his voice carrying without a microphone, "and I've reviewed the obstacles placed in his path." His gaze locked onto Hargrove. "Care to explain why the state is blocking a project that could revitalize an entire region?" Hargrove's gavel hit the desk with a weak clack. "This hearing is to assess operational viability." "Assess this." Mara slapped a thick folder on the table. "Independent geological surveys, economic impact projections, and—" She flipped it open to a flag page, this list of campaign donations from Cray Mining to every board member present. The room exploded. Hargrove's gavel came down like a hammer. "Order, order." But it was too late. The governor leaned into the chaos, speaking just loud enough for the microphone to catch. "I think we've seen enough." Outside, the crowd had tripled. Miners held signs reading "Coal not KRAY." News vans lined the street. And standing at the foot of the steps, flanked by federal agents, was Roland Cray, out on bail but visibly shaken. He caught Ethan's eye, his usual smirk replaced by something colder. "This isn't over." Ethan didn't stop walking. "Yeah, it is." Behind him, Governor Ayers announced a full audit of the mining board. Celebrations erupted across Cedar Ridge that night. The diner stayed open late, serving free pie. Someone strung up a banner across Main Street. "The People's Mine." But Ethan slipped away, driving alone to the cemetery. Howard Cole's grave was unmarked for 30 years, just a patch of grass with a county-issued plaque. Now, a proper headstone stood there, paid for with the first profits from a mine. Ethan knelt, placing a chunk of raw rhodium ore on the granite. "We got Uncle Howie." The wind rustled the trees, carrying the distant sound of laughter from town. Mara found him there an hour later. She didn't speak, just handed him a thermos of coffee and sat in the grass beside the grave. "They're talking about running you for mayor," she said finally. Ethan choked on his coffee. "Hell no. School board, then." She grinned when he groaned. "Face it, Cole. You're a hero now." He looked down at his hands. Still rough, still stained with dirt under the nails. Still a janitor's hands. "Just a guy who got lucky," he muttered. Mara's smile faded. "Luck didn't do this." "You did." She nodded toward the town. "They did." Lights twinkled in the valley below, brighter than he'd ever seen them. For the first time in decades, Cedar Ridge looked alive. The letter arrived at dawn. Federal indictment notices for Cray and his board cronies. Seizure of assets. And, buried in the legalese, a quiet clause granting Ethan full, uncontested rights to Blackridge Mine. Mara hooped, spinning him in a circle. Liam brought whiskey. Even Darla cracked a smile. But Ethan's gaze kept drifting to mine in the distance, its entrance now framed by new support beams. The fight was over. The work was just beginning. Legacy forged. The morning of the first shipment dawned clear and golden, the kind of autumn day that made the mountains look like they were on fire. Ethan stood at the gates of Black Ridge Mine, watching as workers loaded the raw rhodium into reinforced trucks. Each bar was stamped with a simple, proud label, Cedar Ridge Cooperative. Mara came up beside him, her hair tied back under a hard hat. First $1 million day. How's it feel? Ethan exhaled, watching his breath curl in the crisp air. Honestly, terrifying. She laughed, nudging him with her elbow. You'd rather be mopping floors? He didn't answer right away. His janitor's keys were still in his pocket, worn smooth from years of use. He'd kept them, a reminder, maybe, or an anchor. The rumble of an engine broke the moment. A sleek black car rolled up and Eleanor Shaw stepped out, her sharp heel sinking slightly into the gravel. Ethan, we need to talk. Her office in the newly built cooperative headquarters was all glass and steel, with a view of the mine and the town beyond. She slid a check across the desk. Your buyout offer, she said. Enough to retire on. Enough to leave all this behind. Ethan didn't touch it. Why would I leave? Eleanor leaned back. Because you're not a miner or a businessman. You're a janitor who got lucky. Her voice wasn't cruel, just factual. Take the money, Ethan. Live comfortably. Let us handle the hard part. The numbers on the check were staggering. More than he'd ever dreamed of. Enough to buy a house by the ocean, to never worry again. But he thought of Howard's bones in the dark, of Darla's tired smile, of the kids at the high school who'd started calling him Mr. Cole instead of Mop Bucket. He pushed the check back. I'm staying. Eleanor studied him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. The town square was packed that afternoon. They'd set up a stage beneath the old oak tree, its branches strung with lights. Ethan stood at the microphone, the same one he'd used months ago, to rally them all against Cray. This time, he didn't talk about fighting. We're breaking ground on the new school next week, he said. The clinic expansion starts in January, and every kid in Cedar Ridge gets a college fund, starting today. The cheers shook the leaves from the trees. Later, as the band played and the barbecue smoke curled into the twilight, Mara found him leaning against the oak. Mayor Cole has a nice ring to it, she teased. Ethan groaned. Don't start. She laughed, but then her expression turned serious. You really gave it all up, didn't you? The money, the easy way out. He looked around at the crowded square, at Tommy Riggs dancing with his granddaughter, at Liam flipping burgers with exaggerated seriousness, at the mine's lights twinkling on a ridge like a promise. Not all of it, he said, quietly. Mara followed his gaze. Understanding dawned in her eyes. He hadn't given up a thing. He'd gained everything. If this story of resilience and community inspired you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life underdog victories. And tell us in the comments, what would you have done with the mine? Would you take the money or stay and fight for something bigger? Don't forget to share this with someone who needs a reminder that ordinary people can change the world.